What's up, sports fans, and welcome to the Sports Opinions Podcast. I am your host, as always, Alex Cuesta. You can find me on Twitter at @_Cuesta30, and as always, find Sports Opinions on Twitter at SportsOpinion30. This is the weekly New York sports update for the week of April 11th to April 17th. Like I've been doing the past 2 weeks, I'm going to bring you some sports updates from all the New York sports area teams, not just a few that you hear on the radio. And we're going to bring it to you like we've doing it, going to tell you how they've done the past week, if they've played any games, and any sort of news that is relevant to your team. Starting it off right away, Major League Baseball. The New York Yankees had a better week than they had. They're still playing around 500 baseball. They were 3-2 on the week this week. That's 8-8 so far on the year. So the sky isn't completely falling like everyone thought that it was. They've had, amongst this week, they had wins against the Red Sox, the Detroit Tigers, and against the Marlins, and they also lost to the Marlins and the Sox. Their loss against the Marlins was embarrassing last night. Tanaka got knocked around. No one really hit too well. The guys that have been hitting well this year so far have been Gregorius and Judge, have been the most consistent guys. Gary Sanchez is starting to come around. He's starting to hit his stride a little more, so that's good to see. But there's a lot being made of the struggles of Giancarlo Stanton. Stanton has not played well, and that's not a secret. But in the games that they're really talking about him not playing well are Yankees losses. And a lot of these Yankee losses have a lot to do with the whole team not hitting on those days. And also the bullpen that's just giving up a lot so far this year. So before we start, Yankees fans, before we start raining and booing Giancarlo Stanton like we have been doing, which is embarrassing that Yankees fans are doing that, let's just backpedal here, pump the brakes, and put this into perspective. We're still a really good team. We're 8-8. Sanchez is starting to come around. Judge is hitting well. Gregorius is hitting well. Once Stanton finds his stride, and if our bullpen ever goes back to where it's supposed to be, we're a force to be reckoned with again. Also need to mention there were 2 games in there against the Detroit Tigers that were postponed on the 14th and 15th. They're going to be played both June 4th as a doubleheader. So sky isn't falling in Yankee land. People need to relax. Coming up from April 18th to the 24th, the Yankees are going to have 2 series, one against the Blue Jays, the other one against the Twins. Blue Jays is an interdivision matchup. You have 19 times to see them. You got to get some wins against them. And the Twins are a team that the Yankees should be able to beat because they are one of the best teams in the league. They need to start showing it. Now moving on to a team who has been one of the best in the league, a historically great start for the New York Mets. Maybe coming back down to earth just a little bit. They played 500 ball this week, 3-3. They're 12-4 on the year, still a really good record. They started off continuing their streak hot, finished off their series against Miami, beat Milwaukee once, but then they lost to Milwaukee, beat them again, but they've lost now 2 straight to the Nationals. And it's a little concerning, but there's nothing to really worry about yet. The older guys are still hitting. Frazier's still producing. Gonzalez has been producing at a high level. Adrian Gonzalez, who was a knock all offseason by people, why did they pick him up? They picked him up because he's playing well so far. And Cespedes has been the leader. He's been doing what he's supposed to do. Now, the games have been getting pretty, they're still competitive. They really haven't been blown out at all yet. And another good thing is the Mets starters, between the last 2 games of Wheeler and DeGrom, they've been giving you some decent outings. Wheeler went 6 innings, only gave up 3 earned. DeGrom, 7.1 innings, 12 Ks, only 3 earned. You can live with both of those. So sky isn't falling in Metland either, as much as Evan Roberts likes to think so with his hoodie and his depressedness at losses. But Mets are still a good team so far. I don't think the wheels are going to fall off. Even if they get swept by the Nats are a really good team. It's a team you expect to battle against. Don't put your heads down, Mets fans. You're still on top right now. Upcoming, they still have to finish their series against the Nationals. They have 1 game. They have a series against the Braves, and then they play a game against the St. Louis Cardinals between the 18th and the 24th. So moving on now, we're going to go to basketball. The Knicks and the Nets each played their final game of the year, both with differing results. The Knicks actually beat the Cleveland Cavaliers, which I didn't expect. They beat them 110-98. Cornette was the high man for them with 23 points, 3 rebounds, 2 assists. Then you had Trey Burke and Frank Ntilikina putting in nice nights. Burke with 19 points, Ntilikina putting in 6, Burke with 9 assists, Ntilikina with 4. So it was a good sign for them. They played well. Coming right off the piggyback of that, though, off-season moves are already started. Jeff Hornacek was fired as the Knicks head coach, which I think a lot of people expected. But now the frenzy has begun of who is going to be the Knicks head coach. It is still believed to be a coveted job. I still believe it's a coveted job. So there's a lot of candidates out there. Apparently there is no interest in Jeff Van Gundy from Knicksland, which a lot of Knicks fans wanted to see. But at this point in the process, there's no interest. The guys that are being considered: Mark Jackson, David Fizdale, David Blatt, and Mike Woodson's a name that popped up there. So those are your big 4 guys. There's other guys that are throwing their names in the hat. Metta World Peace is one of those guys that said that he wants to be the Knicks head coach. Knicks fans, run. Don't do that. That's an awful decision. If the Knicks brass does that, I'd be pissed. Just came up on my breaking news. Kenny the Jet Smith, TNT Animals, also is going to interview for the Knicks coaching job, which is interesting right there. Out of these guys, the way I'd rank them, I like David Fizdale. Think David Fizdale is a very good coach. I think he got a raw deal in Memphis. He's a guy I think would do really good in New York. Mark Jackson, apparently, if you listen to the podcast this weekend with Scoop B about our NBA playoff preview, you hear that Mark Jackson possibly comes with Kawhi Leonard. If that's the case, then I don't care what he does. You need to bring him over here. Kawhi Leonard is a superstar that if you pair him with Porzingis, that's the makings of championship runs, especially in the East. David Blatt, I'm not high on. The failure in Cleveland was legit. He couldn't handle superstars. And he couldn't handle the superstar in LeBron James, which I don't know if anyone can handle. But that's the stepping stone. That is the biggest and most important thing for head coaches in the NBA now. How do you handle your stars? X's and O's are X's and O's. But how do you handle your stars? How do you handle your locker room? David Blatt couldn't do that. As far as Mike Woodson, I have nothing bad to say about the guy. He was a pretty good head coach. He was kind of vanilla, but he was a pretty good head coach. He didn't do really too many things bad for the Knicks. He wasn't great, but give him a good supporting cast, and he really could be a good guy for you. So who knows? He could be good for you. Kenny the Jet Smith, I have no idea. He's been an analyst for so long. I don't know how that's going to translate to getting on to head coaching. So yet to be seen what Kenny Smith has to offer. That's my take on that. Some other news, Jim Dolan, weirdly enough, asking for patience from Knicks fans during this rebuild. He told them, it might be a hard process, but he's asking for patience. I don't know how much patience his superstar, Kristaps Porzingis, is going to have with him, but it's weird to hear James Dolan, a guy that's used to just throwing money around and messing up organizations, asking for patience. There might be something to this, and we'll just see how patient he can be. So, who knows? It depends on who he hires as a coach. If he hires David Fizdale, then the patience is probably something he's really preaching. Mark Jackson, if he does come with Kawhi Leonard, that patience is out the window. No one's going to wait for a rebuild to happen with Leonard and Porzingis on the roster. Another interesting throw-in for the Knicks, Kristaps Porzingis jersey was the number 7 selling jersey in the league. Even through injury, his popularity still stays massive. Moving on to the Brooklyn Nets. Brooklyn Nets played their final game of the year, lost to the Boston Celtics 110-97. Nick Stauskas was your high guy with 18 points. Alan Crabb continued to play well with 16 points and 7 rebounds. Karis LeVert doing 11 points. Mentioned the Knicks finished 29-53, one game ahead of the Nets at 28-54. For the Nets, their big news was the postseason interview that came with Sean Marks and Kenny Atkinson. They said that they're committed to re-signing Joe Harris. They're still committed to Jeremy Lin, despite the injuries, wanting to be a big part of the team. Jeremy Lin came out and said he was confident. He's still going to be a starter next year. Really tough to do that with the way Spencer Dinwiddie has played, with the way D'Angelo Russell is expected to play. Karis LeVert has showed that he can handle the ball. So Jeremy Lin's going to have a lot to do to get that starting spot back. And Mark said he was okay with the lack of use of Jahlil Okafor, if I'll put it, by Kenny Atkinson. Jahlil Okafor rarely saw the floor. At first it was because he wasn't fit, and then I have no idea why. Maybe it's the rise of Jarrett Allen that saw him lose time, but he didn't play when Timothy Mozgov came in. So if Timothy Mozgov is playing over you, then there's a problem. So that's the Nets notes. We're going to move on to the NHL, National Hockey League, where the only successful New York metropolitan team is, and that is from New Jersey. Devils, currently in a series with the Tampa Bay Lightning. They are down 1-2. They've lost their first games in Tampa Bay, their first two, 5-2 and 5-3. Taylor Hall continuing his stellar play. He had a goal and assist in the first game. In the third game that they won 5-2, he had a goal and he had 2 assists. And it's really on his back. Kincaid hasn't played well. In the first game, he had 27 saves, allowed 4 goals. Second game, 10 saves, allowed 5 goals. Gave way to Corey Schneider, who had 15 saves and didn't give up another goal. So they went with Schneider for Game 3. Game 3, Schneider has 34 saves and only 2 goals given up. So they're going to continue with him. I know they're playing tonight, right now. So hopefully the Devils can snag another win. But they're the big team right now. They're the big cheese. And if they can go on and get a series win or even make this series more interesting, that'll be great for New Jersey. That'll be great for the New York area. They're the one team we have to root for right now. A team that we want to root for, a team that's legendary in this area, the Blue Shirts, the New York Rangers, they've started their head coaching search. There are 2 things that they're looking for. They're either looking for a coach that has experience with young players, and that's really been the biggest theme. 2 names that I saw popped up were David Quinn, head coach at the University of Boston, which I think if you follow hockey, everyone knows about the Boston area and hockey. U of Boston BU is big time. So that's a good guy, and he has some connections. Shattenkirk was a Boston guy, and there's one other guy that was a Boston guy on the Rangers. So there's a possibility there of wanting to bring them back together. And then there's also Jim Montgomery for the University of Denver. Don't know much about him. I'd be lying if I said I did, but he's a name that's floating out there, hockey fans. And also another news out of Rangers camp, they're close to signing the Swedish forward Michael Lindqvist. He seemed to be a young guy, low risk, high reward, 4th line forward. So who knows what you're going to get out of him. If they do sign him, it could just shore up the 4th line. If he plays well, then pot luck right there. You're dealing with house money. Going on to the Islanders. Their big news. Goalie Mikko Koskinen is linked to come back to the Islanders, and hopefully he played well over in the KHL, so hoping that he is going to be the answer at goalie for them. They're also looking to hire a top hockey exec. They want a GM with Snow being demoted. The guys that they're looking for are all assistant GMs on their current teams. Julien Brisebois from the Lightning, Paul Fenton for the Predators, and Tom Fitzgerald for the Devils. They said they're going to wait for the completion of the first round before they talk to these guys. That's your Islanders news. We're going to move on to the Sabres, Buffalo Sabres, that is. Jack Eichel could be the next captain. He's earned his stripes 3 years in. They couldn't give it to him before that. He's the best player on the team. He's going to get that title without a doubt. Other Sabres news, Ryan O'Reilly and Connor McDavid, 2 stars, both visited the Humboldt team that had that horrible tragedy. They visited the survivors of the bus crash that claimed 16 lives. Great to see when players take the time to do these types of things and reach out to the community, and it's just really nice to see 2 guys like that going to do that. A lot of players have reached out, a lot of organizations have reached out, and it's just something that you hate to see happen to anyone, especially, within your own sport. Going on to Major League Soccer, New York Red Bulls and NYCFC both had good weeks. The Red Bulls won their only game this week, beating the Montreal Impact 3-1. Wright Phillips had a goal. Romero Gamara scored a goal. Amir Murillo had a goal. Their upcoming game is against the Chicago Fire on the 21st. NYCFC, and the Red Bulls have 9 points. They're 3-0-2. NYCFC still sitting on top of the table at 5-1. They had one win and 1 draw this week. They have 17 points. Their win was against Real Salt Lake, 4-0. Tajuri Sharati had a goal. Morales scored a goal, and Burgett scored a goal, and also Alfari in that game. And they drew against Atlanta United 2-2. Villa and Ring both scored goals. Upcoming, they play the Portland Timbers on the 22nd. For the Giants, NFL news, big-time news here. Dez Bryant released by the Cowboys. Who does he automatically want to link up with? OBJ. He said that it would be pretty crazy and it would be cool to see him and Odell Beckham Jr. play together. I've been a Dez Bryant guy my whole life, his whole entire playing career. I think he's a great player. I think you put him next to Odell Beckham Jr., you'll get that dynamic that you were looking for from Brandon Marshall, and it'll be there from Dez Bryant. He's still an athletic freak. He still has big paws. He still can pull the ball down, and it'll pull double teams off of Odell Beckham Jr. They both can stay healthy, and then you put them in there with Shepard, and you put them in there with, what was the young tight end? Forget his name, but he had an outstanding season last year. You give Eli or whoever the hell's quarterback guys time to throw these guys, it's going to be a good prospect. So I don't think Dez is a bad option in New York. And, of course, the draft is still a few days away. Giants are number 2 pick. A lot of mock drafts coming out. Saquon Barkley's there. Trades are there. Pick a quarterback is there. No one has any idea what the hell they're going to do with the second pick. What we do know is it's historic for the Giants. The Giants aren't normally in this position. So what David Gettleman's going to do is a mystery to everyone, but it's got to be good because this is a foundation piece, this is a building block piece, and this is a guy that Giant fans are going to expect to see play every Sunday, play important minutes, do really big things, and possibly be a Hall of Famer. That's the type of guy you need to get at the number 2 pick. Going on to the Jets, big news out of New York Jets camp. Nick Mangold, legendary center, fan favorite, retires after 11 seasons. He's a definite Ring of Honor guy. I think he's a Hall of Famer. I'm a little biased because I'm a Jets fan, but I think just the way he played the game at center, he was a general. He didn't miss games for the most of his career. Towards the end, when he was getting older, he had injuries that kept him off the field for a game here or there. Beginning of his career, he was a rock, and he was widely considered the best center in the game for a long time. Other news, Leonard Williams, defensive lineman for the Jets, star defensive lineman, looking to have a breakout season, looking to get that sack number up because that's where he's the least productive. So he's looking to get that up. And also, the Jets were awarded kicker Nick Rose from the Chargers. On to the Buffalo Bills. Big news from them. Micah Hyde, safety, proposed that quarterbacks get fined for helmet-to-helmet hits. He wants to take the onus off the safeties, defensive backs completely, because he said those high throws that quarterbacks do cause the wide receivers to be put in a dangerous position. So when they're jumping and then they're bringing their heads down, safeties don't have time to aim properly, and they don't want to go at people's knees. My answer is, start going at the knees. I know it's dirty. I played football. I wouldn't want anyone to do it to me, but that's what the league is asking for. You get a couple of star players with blown out knees that are going to start taking away revenue out of their pockets. They're going to change this rule really, really, really fast. Let's see if Antonio Brown gets a blown out knee and then Odell Beckham Jr. follows next week. And then 3 weeks later, it's AJ Green. We'll see, number one, if anyone starts going across the middle anymore, because that might be the big thing. Or if they change the rule and dial it back all the pressure that they have on defensive backs. Also, Bills are reported to be interested in Dez Bryant. That'll be an interesting acquisition. They'd move him there with Zay Jones. And it would be interesting because it depends on who's throwing the ball. I don't know if Dez Bryant wants to put himself in that situation where he doesn't know who the quarterback is. So it'll be interesting to see Dez's response to that. Speaking of quarterbacks, A.J. McCarron made notes saying he's not worried about a rookie QB coming in and taking his spot. A.J. McCarron's coming in there to compete for the starting spot. He's definitely better than Nathan Peterman. But a rookie could spell maybe a one-and-done or a bridge quarterback year for A.J. McCarron, so who knows. And I spoke with Zay Jones. Head coach Sean McDermott came out and said that he's really excited about the development of Zay Jones. I had high hopes for him this year. I think I picked him in fantasy ball. He never panned out this year like he was supposed to. He's a speedy guy. He has good hands. I hope Sean McDermott can do something with him because he's a guy that could be a good wide receiver for a long time in this league. With that concludes this week's weekly New York sports update from the Sports Opinions podcast. Again, I'm your host, Alex Cuesta. Find me on Twitter at 8_Cuesta30. And, of course, find Sports Opinions on Twitter at SportsOpinion30. Hope you enjoyed this. Hope you got your nice digest of New York sports news in its entirety. If I missed anything on your favorite team, leave a comment for me. I will fix it, and I'll make sure that I do better next time. On that note, thank you. This was the Sports Opinions Podcast. Thanks for listening. Click subscribe on YouTube. Have a good one.